Hey everybody, get my 6. But don't just watch for movement, listen for some very peculiar sounds. And yeah, I'm holding my finger there for a reason. Keep your eyes on it. So I've been out of pocket the last few days. I'm healthy, had some people inquire, ask if I've been sick. I appreciate your concern, but no, I've just been super busy pursuing some other, things I've been getting into here lately. And so I've been out of pocket. But I had a very interesting conversation yesterday with some wonderful people that my family and I just met. And I kind of wanted to share a story with you that I picked up from these folks. And I want to show you some of the things I've been working on. Multiple things, some woodworking projects I've gotten into. Things have just been busy. I mean, if you've been following the channel, aside from me not having put up a video for a few days, you will know that about 4 days or so ago, I actually did what I said I was going to do. You know, I've been boasting for 2 months that I was going to win the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympic 1500 meters final this fall in my backyard here in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. I did that. We had the race. No one beat me. Okay, and it's on video. If you don't believe me, you can go back and watch it. It's called He Achieves the Impossible. No one beat me, so therefore I won. Just like that 5K foot race back in October. First foot race that I'd won in almost 20 years. I think it was 15 or 16 years. So having done these two things, having shocked the sports world with such ferocity, if that's a word, ferocity, I don't know how you properly pronounce it. I'm a writer, not a speaker, not a pronunciator, but I've retired. That's it. I've retired. I was going to make a big ado about it, but whatever. Nobody cared the first time I retired. I doubt they would this time. So I've retired. Now, with that said, I have been writing, believe it or not, back in October, somebody said that I should put together some sort of special Christmas thing, you know, like Bigfoot, Sasquatch files, something or other for Christmas. Almost done with it. Actually started at the end of October. And so here within just a very short time, we're going to have Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 7, a very special Christmas edition. Okay, so that's been keeping me busy. And the woodworking projects I've started, I've actually bought some power tools, and I still have all of my fingers. So things are going well. I'm going to show you some of the stuff I've done here in a minute. But let's get to this conversation because this is very interesting, okay? You know, this is, I think, the 5th Christmas we're having in our house. Here, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Wow, where has the time gone? This is our 5th Christmas here in the United States, together as a family. Me, my beautiful bride, Dearly, a.k.a. Giggly Girl, and our son, Daniel. It's our 5th Christmas in this house, as we were fortunate enough to buy this place just a few months after having arrived here from Asia. And for the second time in that time period where we have a real Christmas tree, but for the first time in that period of time, we actually went out and cut it ourselves. Not here, not from our place. I feel like something's standing back there just watching and listening. So continue to get my 6. And again, listen for particular sounds. This story relates to a sound we captured on camera here about 6 weeks ago. Blood-curdling scream just after dark. And it happened right here. I was actually down at the house, but we heard it coming from these woods. And I think I might know a little more now after having this conversation with somebody that I met yesterday than I did 6 weeks ago. So Dearly, I guess she saw in a movie or something. She saw a family going out and cutting their own Christmas tree. It was last year. We watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and you remember the beginning of the movie. They go out to cut their own tree. Of course, they end up getting stuck under a semi and going off the road. Well, Dearly said the other day, even though we'd already put up, you know, our artificial tree, we've got the cutest little 6-footer we bought at a thrift store 4 years ago. We've used it the last 4 years, and I think it was brand new. It was still in the box. We got it for $4. So we've paid, you know, on average $1 per year to have this tree. We had that up in the living room where we always put it, had it decorated, did it the day after Thanksgiving. But Dearly just had this aha moment. She said she wanted to experience going out and cutting down our own Christmas tree at a Christmas tree farm. And she said we should do that next year. And I said, "Oh, contraire, monsieur, why wait till next year? Let's do it this year." And she was like, but we already have our tree up. And I said, who cares? No one has promised tomorrow, you know? So let's do it. And so what we decided to do was take our already decorated artificial tree and put it up in our son's room so he could have his own Christmas tree and go out and get a new one. So yesterday we did that. I'm not going to tell you exactly where we went, because in telling this story, I'm also going to try to protect a questionable creature, okay? And my question to you is, if these things don't exist, then how do you explain the story I'm about to tell you, okay? Or if these things have been, gosh, I've Googled the dickens out of this thing here in the last 24 hours. I've learned some words that I don't know, like not extinct, but when an animal is no longer believed to be in a particular area, they're not extinct if they exist elsewhere, but they are, I don't know, extrapolated. You know, somebody out there watching this will know the word. Go ahead and type it in the comment section. You know, I was meeting with a guy the other day for lunch. He's an older gentleman in his 70s, wise beyond his years, and in his 70s he's up there in years. This guy is like, I consider him one of my spiritual gurus. And what's interesting is he never knew what I did for a living, and I've known this guy for almost 20 years. It's not an odd relationship that I have with this gentleman. It's a very special relationship I have with this gentleman. And when we get together and when we meet, we never talk about earthly matters, like, you know, what we do for a living. But somehow it came up the other day. And when I told him I was a writer, he was shocked. And he said to me, and he's very humble. He's one of the most humble individuals I've ever met in my life. And that's one of the things that draws me to him. Because he is accomplished. He is very accomplished. I don't name drop. We know name droppers are people who want you to believe that they're more important than they are. I know I'm not important, but also I value the relationships I have with my friends, with my acquaintances, and this guy, you know, my spiritual advisor. What I would tell you is that it's highly possible some of you watching this video has seen this guy in movies. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. So he's very well accomplished, okay, but he's very humble. So when I told him, when it came up that I was a writer, he was shocked, and he said, "Oh my God, Kevin," he goes, "Do you know you're talking to a guy that doesn't even know how to define an adverb or an adjective? I don't even know what a pronoun is." And I said to him, "I don't know what those things are either. I just know how to use them really well." And we had a good laugh. But what's my point to this? Oh, like, that's why I don't know the word about what you call an animal that used to be indigenous to an area but is not now. Kind of like, for instance, bison or buffalo. You know, here in Virginia, there are still people that have buffalo farms or bison farms, but the animals are no longer indigenous in the wild. Now, once upon a time they were, but we all know that story. We know the tragedy that happened with the buffaloes. But there used to be a great northern herd and a great southern herd. You know, it's funny. Only miles away from my homestead here in Albemarle County, Virginia, there's a turnpike called Gap Turnpike. It got its name because where the road is, it was originally a buffalo trail that, I mean, it was wide enough you could get 4 semi-tractor trailers through it. And this is going through the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, crossing state lines. These herds are said to have been so big at one point, 300-400 years ago. If you were to sit there and watch the first animal of this buffalo herd come by, and you sat and you didn't get up until you watched the last one in the herd go by, you would have to sit there for 3 months. That's how big these herds were. They were huge. They were ginormous, as I would say, and that's probably not even a word. So that kind of validates my point. Okay, so anyway, we're at the Christmas tree farm yesterday at an undisclosed location. And, you know, Dearly actually made a video about that. Our family out there cutting down the tree, or actually I made the video. Dearly was in it, and Daniel. But you can overhear parts of the conversation I was having with this woman about this. If you know, think I'm making this up, I've been accused of that, you know. You can go watch Dearly's video on her channel, Life with Dearly, and over here in the background, me and this wonderful lady I met having this conversation while Dearly was filming a lot of the handmade ornaments and whatnot this woman had in her shop where they sold the trees. But I was small talking with the woman, and they live out in the middle of nowhere, just like me, but they're kind of close. Let me just say, if you were a wild animal, it would be close. If you're going to get in your car and drive, or if you're going to walk, you know, it's a considerable distance away. But as the crow flies and as other creatures travel, it's not that far. That's why it really made me curious as to this thing we heard out here about 6 weeks or so ago. So I'm small talking with the lady. We built a rapport pretty quickly. And so I asked her, I said, you know, you're pretty remote. It was really neat. Her house, it looked similar to ours. And I mentioned that to her and asked her when hers was built, because, you know, ours was built in 1903. She told me hers was built in 1840. Wow. So anyway, we had conversations about odd things happening in old houses, and, you know, she's a believer. That's what I'll say. I'll put that out there. She's a believer. And she had some pictures on her cell phone she showed me that would make naysayers believers. Faces in glass, just some really neat stuff. So when I asked her if she had ever seen anything odd, non-paranormal related, more like cryptid related or strange animals related, she looked at me, and I think she was trying to figure out what I was talking about. I didn't want to just come right out and say Bigfoot, Sasquatch. But after she thought for a hot second, she said, you know, yes. And I said, what, if you don't mind telling me? I said, come on, you've already told me about the ghosts. You know, how much crazier could I think you are if I were to think that? But I don't. So you're safe to tell me this story. And she goes, we have seen some really large cats around here. And I said, how large? Like bobcat large? Like, you know, well-fed dumpster cat large? And she said, no, as in like 180 pounds large. I said 180 pounds. That would be like puma large, like mountain lion, like cougar large. And she said, yeah. And so their homestead, they have 7 acres, just a little bit bigger than ours. They're nestled in a valley, and it's really neat because, you know, when I hike through these hills back here behind my home, if I were to go straight up long enough, I could get to the Blue Ridge Parkway. What do they call that? The Skyline Drive, Shenandoah Skyline Drive. It starts down in North Carolina, comes up through Virginia. Yeah, it cuts through Tennessee. It's very long, but and you know, a couple summers ago, I actually hiked up there. Remember that? That's the time when I strapped the GoPro around my head and went up there and showed some beautiful views. And we saw some really odd things in that video too. But, so anyway, she's in that valley, but I'm not giving away her location because that valley goes for hundreds of miles, as you can imagine. But she said there have been times they've just been peering out across the valley at the far end of a field, which might be, you know, a mile and a half away, and they would just see this large, creamish, tannish creature loping, taking giant strides, larger than a deer, running more gracefully than a deer, and then just disappearing. And she shared with me also that when her son, who's now approximately 18, when he was 6, he had gone outside in their backyard, and they have no neighbors within sight. He'd gone outside to play with the dogs, throw tennis ball at the dogs, and she said he was only out for a minute or so before, next thing she knows, he's banging on the back door, which wasn't locked, but he was so, his anxiety was so high, he was scared, he was terrified, he couldn't even slow his thinking down enough to think to twist the doorknob and open it. He's just banging on the door for mom to let him in. So she opens the door, he comes running in, and he tells the story at 6 years old of seeing this giant cat. Now, the family had sheep. I don't know if they still do or not, but they had sheep at the time, and there were sheep in the pen. And this cat, the kid said, which was as big as a deer, as he described it, was sitting in a limb in a tree above the pen, like it was trying to figure out how to get down into the pen, get one of those sheep, get it out of the pen, and then get away with it. And when it looked over and it saw him, it jumped from the limb of that tree to the limb of a neighboring tree, scurried down the tree, and then loped off into, so it didn't come at him. It didn't, you know, try to attack him. And it could be because he had his dogs with him. But just seeing this thing was enough to terrify this kid. So the lady called, you know, the authorities. That's what we're going to say. I don't want to name any specific, you know, groups or divisions, but I will just say the authorities. She called the authorities. They came out. They talked to her and they told her, you know, these things aren't here. They haven't been here in a long time. As history goes, the story goes that basically these things have not been around since the days of the Civil War back in the 1860s. You know, I used to read a lot of history. It was just something that fascinated me, and it still does at times. It's just so hard to find history anymore that's actually unbiased. Most people who write history, and you'll notice I'm not even referring to them as historians because that's probably not the proper term. The proper term would probably be slanters of the past, because so many people have an agenda. It's really hard to find books written about history where they simply provide the facts and allow you to make your mind up. Everybody wants to blame somebody in the past or paint a picture that might not be. And it's just, you know, when I read those books, once I pick up on that there's an agenda, I stop reading. I stop reading it. I've thrown books in the wood stove and burned them up in the fire because I don't want people's slanted opinions of the past. I want the facts, and I want to make my own mind up, you know. Double negative. I want to make my mind up. Told you, I'm not a speaker. I'm just a writer. I would have caught that had I written that. Anyway, circle hunts. Back when the settlers first came here from Europe, back when we were a British colony, they saw animals here that terrified them because they didn't exist in England. They didn't exist in the old world. Cougars, wolves, which there used to be ginormous wolves all over the east coast of the United States. These animals terrified the settlers. So you know what they did? They did what, sadly, it seems to be human nature to do. They killed them all. So they would have these giant circle hunts where they'd get everybody in the community together. They'd form a giant circle, huge radiuses, maybe miles wide. And then they would hunt their way into the middle. And they would literally shoot everything in sight. And if they could eat it, they would. If they couldn't, they wouldn't. If they you know, determined it to be an animal not worthy of being eaten, but they'd kill it anyway. But this is how they summarily eradicated the wolves and the cougars and all these beautiful creatures on the East Coast that they determined to be dangerous, and I guess they could be. I mean, you still hear stories at least once a year. There's always that one story here in Virginia where coyotes will carry off small children. So some of these wild animals, you know, are indeed dangerous, but just in my humble opinion doesn't mean you have to, you know, extrapolate every single one of them from your region. And I don't know if extrapolate is the right word to use there. But anyway, that's what was done. So supposedly the cougars, the pumas, the mountain lions of the East Coast, this is what happened to them. And supposedly they haven't been around here for, you know, 100 and almost 200 years. Well, no, wait, 18. Yeah, 140, 50, 60, 160 years. So this is, you know, the authority tells this woman this. Oh, you're just seeing things. Your son just saw things. So anyway, she shared with me that she has a friend the next mountain over from her who was having a problem with these things, these large cats taking his sheep. And he kept calling the authorities. And they would tell him the same story. That can't be what it is because these things don't exist in our area. And he told him, he said, hey, I've lost too much livestock. I've done the right thing. I've called you and I've told you. The next time I see one on my property, I'm going to dispatch it and I'm going to bury it. I'm not even going to waste my time calling you because you're not going to do anything about it. And of course, they told him, well, you can't, you know, kill what you can't see because it's not there to be seen because these things don't exist. So, and this is exactly what the woman told me. She said sometime after this gentleman had that conversation with the authorities, he saw another very large cat, as in almost 200 pounds cat on his property. He dispatched it. He buried it immediately. He didn't call anybody. He didn't notify anybody. He didn't even tell a neighbor in passing that this happened, okay? And he didn't have time. She said within 20 minutes of him burying that thing, the authorities showed up where he buried it, dug it up, and took it away. They didn't speak to him. They didn't call him. They didn't even knock on his door. They just, almost like the Men in Black, right? And so I said to her, I said, if that is how that happened, and I'm not doubting your word, ma'am, that would lead me to believe that that thing had to have been trackable. They must have had tracking devices on that creature to where they knew where it was at all times. And once they saw that it stopped moving, and maybe even once they could see that its vitals were no longer operable, they quickly went out there to get that thing before maybe there could be witnesses of its existence. And she said, exactly. So that's just an example of great minds thinking alike, she and I. I do not have reason to doubt her story. And after hearing her tell me these stories, I told her about the scream I heard coming from the woods out here behind my house about 6 weeks or so ago, and I will try to find that video and put it on the end of this one. I always say I'm going to do that when I remember these videos, when I make these videos. I think it was called Blood Curdling Scream, etc., etc. We all know how these videos on the internet have the strangest names. I mean, who comes up with this stuff? You remember newspapers? The headlines just kind of said what it was, and now it's like, huh? With the internet is crazy. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And the question I have is, if these things aren't around here, then how did that happen? How do you explain that? So anyway, as I mentioned I would do, as I wrap this up, I'm going to show you some of the things I've been working on. I'm going to show you my woodworking projects. And now look, yes, these are available on our Etsy shop. The link is in the description box below, as is the link for the, my books on Amazon. Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 6. It was brought to our attention this morning from one of our friends in England that for some reason it wasn't available in England. We went in and fixed that. It is now. I was scratching my head thinking, why aren't there any UK sales? Well, now we know, but now it's possible. So check that out. But here, but my point is, I'm not making you buy this. No more than I made you click on the link to this video and watch it. So don't even start with that stuff. But, okay, so I got my power tools. I got my skill saw, my circular saw, and I got a orbital sander. I got all kinds of neat stuff. I've been going to Lowe's and actually buying lumber, like 6 feet long. This one's 9 1/4 inches wide by 3/4 of an inch thick. Sawing these things down into lengths. Painting. Look, let me show you. Ready? With no further ado, as Dearly would say. Look what I made. Look at this. Dun dun dun. I'd rather be squatching. Isn't that neat? This is 9 by 9 and 3/4 inch thick. This is more time consuming more than anything I've realized. It's not that it's hard, but you have to be very meticulous. And we are using stencils. I've had some stencils custom made. We've had to paint over some of these because it's harder than you think, making sure everything doesn't run together. But there's a big old Bigfoot Sasquatch. He's 4 inches tall, or her, or it, but definitely not of them because there's only one. So there's one. Let me show you another one. And Dearly's helping me with this, okay? I'm using the power tools. She's afraid of the saw. I'm doing a lot. The meticulous part, the lettering, that's her. I can't do it. My big old freak. I mean, I can type until my knuckles bleed, but when it comes to like painting in those, I can't do it, but she can. She has more steady hands. Check out this one. Social Distancing World Champion. Isn't that neat? And, I've got some more coming. I haven't got the stencils yet. I've got these, and then here's the third one. Check this one out. Now, this is, I have shirts that say this too on our merch shelf, down there from Teespring. That's okay. No one believes that Bigfoot Sasquatch saw you either. I actually did the letters on this one. It took me about half an hour because there's so many. But now I've drilled holes in here. We've got the rustic looking yarn string to hang them up. I think I might change this. So I think I might keep the holes, but actually use 2 pieces of yarn. I don't know. I might put some things on the back instead of even drilling the holes. Depends on how people want them. But, so we got that. And then I freehanded this. I've got those Bigfoot Sasquatch Christmas tree ornaments. I figured what else goes good with Bigfoot Sasquatch other than aliens. So I've been making these too. And these I have not stenciled. I freehanded this. Made a UFO. And then, of course, 'tis the season. Had to have an alien with a Santa hat. So those are on there too. So that's what I've been doing, as well as writing 3,000 words a day daily. Working on that special Christmas edition of Bigfoot Sasquatch Files. It'll be volume 7. It will be out in plenty of time to where even if you do order the print copy, you're going to have it well in time before Christmas. So nothing makes Christmas better than snow, cookies and milk, mistletoe, the fresh smell. We love the way that little pine tree is making our house smell. It's wonderful. I have missed that. But hey, Bigfoot Sasquatch, you add that to the equation and it's the perfect Christmas. So thanks for being here for another video. Sorry I've been out of pocket for a few days, but as you can tell, I've been very busy. But I'm going to try to get back to doing this more regularly. Wanted to share that amazing wildcat story with you. I thought that was pretty cool. See you for more next time.